Hey, you know what's a really big game studio? Supergiant Games! Pause for laughter. 8 years ago, they hit the scene with their smash indie darling, The Bastion. I have just been beat at a correction. It's just Bastion, no thee. The game was highly praised at the time, and the company has seen a lot of success since. But was it really that good? Tastes have changed a lot since the days of the Xbox Live Summer of Arcade. I'm willing to bet that this game doesn't hold up. Yeah, this game's pretty damn good. Bastion! One of the big-name indie game successes before Steam decided there's no such thing as too many games. It's an isometric action game about a wall guard who wakes up one day to find out the mad scientists he was protecting have accidentally exploded the world. He makes a beeline for the Bastion, which is the emergency shelter for the whole city just in case something like the end of the world happens, but don't worry, we probably won't need it. When he gets there, he meets the man with the distractingly sexy voice who's been narrating his journey. That's the big gimmick of this game. While you're playing, Velvet Pipes is gonna relay bits of the story or give you more details on the stuff you run into. It's dynamic, fuses gameplay and story, and was just so easy on the ears. But I'm not gonna let myself get distracted from criticizing the game just because the voice is honey dripped from the gods.
No whack-ass fellas all dress alike. Kids wondering the same thing.
Whew, nope, gonna have to play with him on mute. I do think that the story gets a bit overshadowed by Logan Cunningham's fantastic voice work. The story itself starts as a fairly straightforward, world got apocalypse, try to fix it. But unlike a lot of other entries in this story genre, we do eventually get to learn why this world got blasted into the sky. The Ceylondians were a big technological empire that was still getting into slap fights after years of war with the more spiritual Ura. The calamity was caused by Ceylondia as a sort of final solution for the Ura, but it wasn't ever going to be used, of course, it was just in case.
Whole point of the Doomsday Machine is lost. If you keep it a secret, why didn't you tell the world, eh?
Now that immediately sets this story apart from other Wander the Ruins of a Great Civilization games. We actually talk to some of the people involved. We get some inkling of the xenophobic political climate that led to the deaths of millions. Also, the Ura survived the calamity. It's not clear how many were lost and how many survived, but the calamity clearly did a really shit job of killing the people it was designed to exterminate. And the story has other techniques for drawing you in than just pretty narration. There are mementos you find scattered around that you can bring to the scant few other survivors and get their opinions on. Some is just backstory, but others are very character revealing.
Sure, the world's all gone to pieces farther than the eye can see. But leave it to this gal to point out the amazing view.
There's a bunch of animal pals you gather in the course of your journey, and when the Bastion is attacked by Ura, they join in the fight and can actually be permanently killed off. You better believe I worked my rolling shoulder into dust trying to save them all. You can destroy my Apocalypse Life Raft, but don't you dare point those spears at my Sand Gator. For a game that mechanically resembles mass murder simulators like Diablo, there are more than a few occasions where you don't have to kill everything. An early level has you getting into a one-on-one duel with a ghost miner as his buddies cheer on. When you win, they back off in respect. Yes, the giant cartoon hearts around non-aggressive enemies is a bit over the top, but it's at least visually distinct. The thing that most stood out to me on this playthrough was the realization that Rux the voice box is far more of an unreliable narrator than he first appears. He's tangentially related to the cause of the calamity, being a science head, but it's not clear if he objected to the genocide plan, at least if it had worked properly. He's happy to find survivors in Zulf and Zia, but if you listen to his comments on stuff related to the Ura, you get the sense he still doesn't respect their culture. Specifically their stronger faith, which is interesting because it's implied the Ura and Ceylondians share at least some gods. Rux is completely unwilling to look at the shattered child drawing. He really doesn't want to think about the pile of corpses the calamity caused.
I don't need to see what happened to the Ura. I'm trying to undo it, remember?
Of course, he has a reason for wanting to look away because the Bastion has a secret function of turning back time. The final act of the game presents the player with two extremely telegraphed binary choices. You can either continue to carry the strongest weapon in the game, or take Zulf's unconscious body back with you to the Bastion. If you carry back Zulf even though he betrayed you, the Ura eventually stop firing on you. After having little choice but to tank hits for a while, a sense of respect and admiration for your determination is imparted by the Ura warriors. It's a fantastic bit of visual storytelling and is one of the few moments that goes by mostly free of Rux's narration, letting the moment sit with only the music in the background.
Are making way for me. I'm coming home, sweet home.
Once you get back, you get to decide whether you use the core energy to turn back time to a not exploded world, or detonate the core and turn the Bastion into a ship so you can live somewhere else. Some people have said this ending is a metaphor for how someone would handle a breakup, but it honestly feels much more broadly applicable. I didn't spot any consistent theme to support that this isn't just a straightforward question of which is better, returning to the past or living with tragedy. And unlike a lot of moral choices in games, there isn't really a right answer in the gameplay sense. Zia had a very unhappy childhood with her father outright refusing to teach her of her heritage. She straight up tells you everything she'd like to remember happened after the calamity. But Zulf was in the middle of his wedding when the calamity happened. Were he conscious, he most certainly would tell you to turn back the clock. It's also implied that the kid had someone he was sweet on who died as well. So even by the metric of making the characters you care about happy, there is no correct answer. Now you could say rewinding time is better because it unexplodes countless people, but I never met those people. Also, Rux makes it clear that there's basically nothing stopping the calamity from happening again if you rewind time. If it's very linear time travel, then it's almost guaranteed to happen again. But then again, maybe not. It certainly would be nice if all those people hadn't died. The world before the calamity certainly wasn't perfect, but it's always better to have people alive and trying to make things better. So the final choice really does come down to what you think is best. I always take the life raft version, but both endings change the images you see in the credits, giving you some idea of how things played out. Even outside of its sexy narrator, Bastion has a really good story and it's well told. But that narration is pretty impressive. It's fairly common for big-budget games to have reams of optional dialogue nowadays, but back when it was released and even today, there is an impressive amount of narration in the Bastion for an indie game. And some of it you can miss, like an early line that triggers if you spend some time smashing stuff. I swear, Rux has a different turn of phrase for every single weapon combination.
The repeater and machete, favorite choices of the Ura hunters we once fought.
There are a lot of weapons. I guess I should talk about the gameplay, but I don't really have a lot to say. It's a 2-weapon hack-and-slash game with dodging, blocking, and special attacks. Enemies are well telegraphed for the most part. There are some challenge areas where you can do weapon-specific challenges. I like how the first reward for these is upgrade material for that specific weapon. That's good game design. Some of the levels have set pieces, and there's a couple combat gauntlets. Actually, those gauntlets highlight one issue with the narration. Rux will recount some personal history for the primary cast during these gauntlets, but in the middle of an intense fight maybe isn't the best time for character development. The audio mixing is great, so it's not that you can't hear Rux, it's just you may not be able to absorb any of it because you're multitasking. This can happen in some of the later levels as well. That all depends on your personal capacity for multitasking and the difficulty you've got it on. The game comes with a no sweat mode that gives you unlimited combat revives, so you can still experience this story even if you aren't particularly good at the combat. There's a New Game Plus mode and a bunch of optional god shrines that, when activated, will buff the enemies or debilitate you. There's 10 of these and you can have any combination active, so if you like breaking down stone walls with your face, that option is certainly there. I played with 2 active, and that was tough enough for me, thanks. Nearly 8 years on, and Bastion is still a fantastic game with a story well worth experiencing or re-experiencing. We're going to keep looking at Supergiant's works. Next time I'm going to talk about Transistor, which I remember being my favorite. We'll see how that goes. Till next time.